Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Matt Lateplo, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for our next live presentation from TriStar Gold. Before I introduce our speaker, a few points to note. Please submit your questions in the question box at the bottom left of the slides. Once the Q&A session has ended, don't log out. You will automatically be transferred into the TriStar booth, where you can continue to ask questions via chat and access additional shareholder materials. On a final note, all of today's presentations will be recorded and available for 24/7 replay. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Nick Appleyard, CEO and President of TriStar Gold, Inc., which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the symbol TSGZF and on the TSXV under the symbol TSG. Welcome back, Nick.
Thank you very much, and thanks everybody for listening today. All right, I will take you through our presentation, and as Matt just said there, please do put some questions in so we can have an interesting discussion at the end of it as I try and answer them. So here goes. Because I think what everyone wants to hear today is what we're doing in the future, so I will be making some forward-looking statements. So, just please be aware that there is risk in them, and there's all sorts of things that could happen in these days that may impact our ability to perform. But I will be trying to give you guidance on what's coming up in the near future here, as well as telling you where we are right now. So, talking about right now, as we speak on site, we have three main corridors that will work, so to speak. We are completing a pre-feasibility study, which means we're doing the resource modeling, the geological modeling, cost estimation, plant design. All of that work is happening to advance Esperanza South to a pre-feasibility study this summer. It's a huge lot of work, and it's keeping the team really busy, but that's, we've got a team working on that right now. But also, in parallel with that, we're doing permitting activities, which means all of the baseline activities, flora, fauna, hydrology, social license, land ownership, cave studies, archaeology. It's a huge amount of work that goes on to get this project ready to really kick off the permitting activities once we have the pre-feasibility study. You need the pre-feasibility study engineering to do the impacts analysis. So those two work hand in hand, but usually people don't give enough attention to the amount of work that goes into this now. So, our permitting budget for this year is probably higher than our pre-feasibility study. It's a lot of work that goes into making a project, getting it permitted. And the third bit of work is probably the exciting bit, is exploration. We're still growing this project. We're going to have 2 rigs working. We've got a 20,000 meter exploration drill program planned initially, multiple targets, and that's going to add the sort of the growth beyond what we already have now, but that's also underway now with the exploration team working on that. Just a quick look at the company structure. Most of this slide is sort of factual, and I'll leave it for people to review on their own, but things I do want to point out, we have about $10 million Canadian in cash, so everything I talk about today that's happening this year, we are fully funded to complete. And the other things I want to talk about, obviously our biggest shareholders, US Global in Texas, that's Frank Holmes' company, Gold 2000 in Zurich have a big percentage of us, and RBC in Canada have a big percentage of us. So they're probably our 3 biggest institutional shareholders, both Paradigm and Cormark. Brock Coulter, John at Cormark give us very good analyst coverage, and those reports are available if anyone would like them as well. Board of directors now reflects a development company that's growing. We've had Eric Zanshab join us recently, who was just recently the head analyst at Canaccord, Jessica Van Den Akker, who is a chartered public accountant with an auditing background in natural resources, so she makes a really strong chairman of our audit committee for us. And Mike Isto, the COO of Royal Gold, who is also a mining engineer, who's run some of the largest mining operations in North America and also worked in development of them. So they bring a real strength to the development profile of our board of directors, and sort of reflects, I think, where we're going, not where we've been. It's no longer a board of a junior exploration company. So just to look at where we are, the project Castelo de Sonhos sits at the southern border of Pará State in central Brazil. You can also see on this slide our current mineral resource statement. We've got indicated resources of 1.5 million ounces now and inferred resources of 700,000 ounces. So it's been growing really nicely. And I do want to point out, when we started our pre-feasibility study, we had an aim of upgrading our inferred resources to hit the target of 1.3 million ounces of indicated. We've exceeded that already, and we've still got some more assays to come. So hopefully that will even grow a little bit more. But this project just keeps on giving. So we aim for 1.3, we got 1.5, and the grade is still exactly where it's supposed to be. So a little more detail on the project, the Castello de Sonhos, the Castle of Dreams in English. We own the property outright. We are a single asset company by design. The property is a paleoplacer gold deposit, which means it was laid down in sediments, in this case, about 2.1 billion years ago. Identical to two highly profitable mines around the world. One is Tarkwa in Ghana, one is Jacobina in Brazil, owned by large mining companies, and as I said, mined very profitably. So we had the opportunity to learn a lot from them. The other thing that's really important on this slide here is the infrastructure that we see close to the project. You can see a little in the satellite image here on the right-hand side. There's the village of Castello de Sonhos, about 8,000 people, really good labor force. All those people lived there, moved here 20 or 30 years ago to work in mining, logging, and agriculture. They're primary industry people who understand working the land, understand mining and what we're going to be doing here. So that's a supportive community. You have the highway. It's now a sealed highway connecting the ports on the Amazon in the north to the big city of Cuiabá in the south. You have power lines running up there. Power is being generated to support the soybean industry south of us, but we will benefit from that. So there are already high tension power lines running there, and our project already is connected to grid power, so power is not an issue. Water is everywhere. That's not an issue. The other really important thing you can see here is it's farming country. This is not pristine environment. We're not going in anywhere where we're going to do any damage. It's farming country that's, it's been farmed for 30, 40, 50 years. And, we're going to go in and just mine on marginal cattle grazing country. And of course, it's very, very clean. We have no sulfides on this project, which means there's no ARD. Environmentally, it's a very clean project by its very nature. And it's very simple. So we like it from that point of view. The resources have been growing rapidly. Over the last 3 or 4 years, it's grown 8-fold now from less than 300,000 ounces to, as I said, that 1.5 plus 700,000. We have a positive PEA with a post-tax IRR of 43%, and now we're funded through to PFS by Royal Gold, and we have additional funding now to do the exploration, which is going to be the excitement, the sizzle, the cream on top part. As I just mentioned, we have a PEA we published in late 2018. You can see there the numbers at $1,250 gold. It had the conceptual economics are sensational, I think, 43% post-tax rate of return, all-in sustaining under 700, and a very manageable capex. It's this study that got the attention of Royal Gold, and after we published this, they did due diligence on us. It took them 4 or 5 months. And then they invested in the project by buying a NSR royalty for 1.5% for $8 million US, and said, take that study and turn it into a pre-feasibility study and advance the project to permitting. So that's exactly what we've been doing. But, so here's really what that means. If you can see the graphic on the left-hand side, that's about 10 kilometers across on each side of the square. Esperanza South is the part we're focusing on only. There might be a little bit, so maybe 90% of the project is there right now. So that's what we're developing. There's a lot more to come. But the PEA had 8,200 tons a day. The PFS is going to be probably the same. The PEA had 95% recovery. It's going to be slightly better, actually, 97, 98. But in general, the same parameters in the PEA are going to be in the PFS. It's just going to run a higher gold price, higher metallurgical recovery, a more favorable foreign exchange rate, and of course, more detailed engineering studies. And what we see in this from a retail value side is when a company has a PEA, in general, they trade at 0.1 to 0.2 times the net asset value of the company. By the time you get a pre-feasibility study and you've got formal reserve statements out on the project, you should be trading at least 0.5 times the net asset value of the company. So there should be a really nice re-rating. When we get this pre-feasibility study out, which is currently scheduled for August this year. We haven't actually set the gold price yet, but we presume we'll be using around $1,500 gold. We'll wait until sort of June, July and see where the price is sitting around then. So I mentioned that we've got, the other part of the project that we're doing is the exploration. Here's a little plan map of the project. You can see that Esperanza South is, on the bottom right-hand side again. That's the focus of the pre-feasibility study. That's the bit that's going to drive, hopefully, a nice re-rate and a nice value addition in the next few months. But on top of that, we're drilling all of these additional targets around the project. And everywhere on this sort of satellite image, you can see a faint yellow sort of outline. That's where we've got gold in soil anomalies. We've also got outcropping conglomerates. And in nearly all of those locations, there's also surface workings from informal miners from the recent past. So, we've got very good chance, we believe, of adding to that top level number and growing our resources still further. In our exploration, we have, I think, 3 sort of styles of targets we're looking at. The first is simple step outs from known mineralization. So you'd call that very high confidence exploration. You drill the section and hit gold on each drill hole, and you're going to keep it going. So you want to just keep stepping out. The second sort of target is, again, conglomerate hosted gold at surface for shallow open pit mining, but in new areas. So that might be Esperanza East, Esperanza Central, Tocadonza, Pedfer, Arayas on this map here. Again, you're reasonably confident that you're going to hit something. You don't know what yet, but there should be additional work come out of that. And the third part of the project, of the exploration side, is what we call CDS deeps, which is where we're looking for a deep target, remobilize gold out of the paleoplacer system into new horizons through the action of an intrusive granite. They're more speculative, more conceptual, potentially more exciting if you hit, but it's higher risk. It's a high risk, high return. So it's nice to see that we've got exploration in all 3 phases, from sort of incremental growth and high risk of success to exponential growth but low risk of success. We've got a little bit of everything that comes. So if you like exploration, we've got all of that. But the difference I think we have between us and a lot of the other companies is we've got the real growth from the pre-feasibility study as well. That is adding intrinsic value to this asset, and the growth through exploration is just cream on top. I will just stop and just remind people, if you have any questions, please write them in so we can get you some answers here. Okay, next slide. We get asked quite a few questions about Brazil as a jurisdiction. In my experience, it's a great mining jurisdiction, and I did see this information on Kitco just a couple of weeks ago. They published the largest gold mines in South America, and even myself running a company in Brazil was a little surprised to see that within the top 10 gold mines in South America, 3 of them are in Brazil. I figured if it surprised me, it would surprise other people as well. So, this is a great jurisdiction for developing large open-scale, open-cut gold mines. They've got 3 of the top 10 in South America already. It would be really nice in a few years' time to have Castelo de Sonhos up there with them as well. It's just a couple of slides on what this deposit looks like for the technically minded out there. This is a section through Esperanza South where we're now drilled out to 50 meter spacing. And you can see in general we have 2 main horizons of the reef-hosted gold. What I do want to point out on this, and is worth just letting everyone know about, all the geology, the interpretation that we're seeing here, this is an earlier phase on this slide, it's all generated using artificial intelligence and machine learning. We've really embraced that new technology, and we get massive value from it. It's doing things for us that we could never have hoped to do just with our geologists working with sections or working with their modeling software. The AI has been fascinating, and it is really added value to this project. And if anyone would like to know more about that, I'm always happy to chat about it. But it's not just something we've done out of academic interest, it's something we've done, and it's adding intrinsic value to this project. At full 3D modeling, the whole project is now generated out of an AI model based on hard data. So you saw on that last slide a the standard section through the paleoplacer deposit. This is one where we look at why we're sort of targeting that CDS deeps, the remobilized gold target. Higher in the profile is some paleoplacer gold. And at the bottom of hole RC524, a big intersection, in this case 8 meters at 7 grams a ton. I think it's actually 3 meters at 12 if you take the top of it, sitting right on a granitic intrusive. You know, the paleoplacer, that gold shouldn't be there. The gold is there, it's related to the granitic intrusive. So we want to know what happens when you're not looking at a 3 or 4 meter wide band of granite, you're looking at the major body of the granite, and it cuts right through the stratigraphic profile of our deposit here. So that's really what that CDS deeps target is about. Are we going to find that sort of concentrations in a more consistent zone deeper in the deposit? Okay, just a couple of slides. This is the village of Castelo de Sonhos. As I said, primary industry people, not people who will be adverse to having a mine just down the road. They're there mainly farming these days and mining. The logging industry is over. And they support the soybean industry. That is the biggest industry in the region. And you can sort of see the sealed highway there. And as I said, power lines, highway, medical facilities, supermarkets, all the sort of infrastructure you need near a mine is available here. And it's close enough that we won't even have a camp on site when we run this operation. People just live in town, drive out to the mine each day. A couple of views just of the project here. There's RC drilling on the top left. As I said, the permitting activity involves reseeding everywhere we're working, and you know, which is obviously a very important part of us. We're very strong in our ESG these days. And then on the bottom left, I did mention that people went there for mining originally. So a lot of it was at Castelo de Sonhos in the 1990s. They did these sort of super trenches, and there's a little image of that. And that is what has helped us guide where we're going to go a lot in the early stages of this work. So that's pretty well the presentation for today. As I said, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in. I've got a couple I will just go through now. But as I said, anyone reach out with more questions, I'd love to answer them. Okay, questions. So I've been asked if I can speak to the infrastructure for Castelo de Sonhos. I touched on it a bit, but specifically, we have the highway, we have power, we have water available, we have a labor force available. You know, we are quite distant to the big cities. It's a day's drive to get to the next big city, or at least 14 to 16 hours. But that works in our favor in a lot of ways. You don't want to be too close to people, and you want to be close to the infrastructure. So things you need to run a project are all available to us, and improving, again, as I said, driven by that growth in the soybean industry. I'm asked, when do we expect the PFS to be completed? We're aiming at August. Everything we can control is in place, and that will happen. Well, we will get it completed. We know the quality of the study we're doing. We know the people who are doing it. Sometimes it's hard to control timelines these days with COVID, but we are currently aiming at August, and we are currently on time to hit that target. But timelines, as I said, have been difficult to predict in the days of COVID, but that's what we're currently looking at. I've been asked, what are the key milestones for 2021? And I think the biggest one, obviously, is going to be the PFS coming out in August. In parallel with that, we'll have, obviously, the exploration program as it progresses. And then once the PFS is out, obviously, then we'll have our impacts analysis, our public disclosure for our public communication with the communities in the area of direct impact for the permitting will be the real milestones for the project. But really for the company, the PFS is the one major milestone for this year. And then obviously, then we would really like to have some excitement out of the exploration. Been asked if we expect to take this property through to production. As TriStar is now, with the management we have and the team we have in place, no, we couldn't do that. We don't have, that's not our skill set. We don't have the bandwidth to be able to take it into production ourselves. Obviously, if the board decided to, we could build that team and get it and put them in place. Currently, our plans are to complete the PFS, advance through to a fully funded bankable feasible project, and in parallel to that, evaluate the options on getting into production. So the three options really are: we beef up our team and we do it ourselves. We find a partner some way and do it in partnership or of some format, or we find an acquirer. For me, I'm open to any of those three options, and as a member of the board, I'm sure we'll all make the decision that's most favorable for our shareholders. When asked, is the local community supportive of the project and do we expect any issues in construction? Yes, currently the local community is very supportive. As I mentioned, these are people who are sort of used to working on the land, they're used to working in primary industry. I think a gauge for me, after having worked in both Peru and Ecuador, if you're in a community where someone in their family works in mining in some format or other, they understand the industry, they understand what we do, they understand the effort we go to protect the environment, and they'll be supportive of the project. When I was in Ecuador, people in the community had no one who worked in mining, they didn't understand it, and everything was an order of magnitude harder. So yeah, we expect the community are supportive. You'll always get a few people who dig their heels in and try and get greedy over certain aspects, and that's part of our daily life of dealing with that, but it's not a major issue. Do we expect any issues at construction? There's nothing that I would see of at this point that I could imagine would be an issue. Construction would be hampered if you were doing it during the wet season, which is sort of December through March, but it wouldn't stop you from working through that period. There's no organized opposition to the mine right now. Again, I'm sure there will be NGOs, as they are in every single project around the world, that sort of see if they can get their foot in the door, but hopefully our good relations with the communities will stop that happening, so I can't imagine anything being a major issue. I've been asked if I can repeat the multiples after the PEA and the pre-fees. Yeah, generally, we did our own evaluation of this. It's not market information. It's something that we did evaluating our peers. And we saw that people who have a scoping study generally trade at 0.1 to 0.2 times the net asset value of the project. Yeah, because you've got a lot of risk to go, and you've got a long time to go. It makes sense you don't get full value yet. But as you move up to a PFS, the company's averaged around 0.5 times the net asset value. And once you got to a bankable feasibility study and into construction, you were getting up to sort of 1 and maybe even slightly higher times the net asset value. So that's what we see as the value growth, the value in engineering, the value in de-risking a project is real. So so we see it go from 0.1, hopefully up to 0.5. Ask how we position from cash capital perspective. Right now we have about 10 million Canadian in the bank. So all the work for this year is financed and funded. We have enough money to get us through to at least the second quarter next year, depending on how quick we spend. If we hit something exciting in exploration, we want to go more aggressive, we would have to look at where that money is going to come from. But right now, we're funded for everything we want to do. Q4, or Q1 next year, we'll have to be appraising how we get to the next level, of whether we partner with someone or whether we finance it ourselves. Again, another similar question: do we expect a re-rating once we complete the PFS? Yeah, we really do. I don't think, in my experience, it doesn't happen like overnight. There'll be a nice jump and some growth as we get onto conferences and talk about those numbers and promote it. But yeah, I really would expect a re-rating once we publish the PFS. Asked about the AI and who we work with. We work with Goldspot. They have some really good people there. I think it's really important to also mention that our Vice President, Moshe Ravastova, is a Stanford-educated mathematician, so he really works as a fantastic bridge. I mean, Mo is a geologist as well and a mathematician, so he works as a bridge between the AI guys and the geology and what we want to achieve. And I think that's allowed us to extract a lot more information from it. So rather than doing things which may be very clever and very interesting but don't add direct value, having that internal bridge someone who really understands AI and the maths behind it, to say, okay, this is what we want, this is the way we should approach it, this is the data we can get you, and that's what's made it so not just interesting, but accretive in value for us. I've been asked, when do we expect our next batch of exploration results? It's a good question. The COVID in Brazil has had, one of the impacts has been that we've all been allowed to keep drilling, keep working, even maybe at a slower rate. But the labs have been greatly impacted on their ability to turn samples around. We've noticed over the last week, samples have started to flow again. I do know that the labs now have a huge backlog of samples. So I'm expecting to receive assays through May here, and would anticipate that we would be publishing our next lot of results at the end of the month, at the end of May. Are there any more questions? If not, I think we're nearly done. Like I said, if anyone has any more questions, you can always come on here and send us questions, or go to the website and send us an email. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the chat today.